We've all been there, right? You make plans, maybe meticulously, and then boom, something changes. Your weekend trip gets rained out, or that meeting pops up out of nowhere.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Now imagine that, but like multiply the stakes, the complexity. That's kind of what it's like in construction.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're diving deep into how construction contracts handle these, well, inevitable shifts, the changes in the work, as they're often called. You shared a great chapter that really unpacks this.
I did, yeah. It breaks down why changes happen, because they almost always do, and how they're formally dealt with using change orders. It goes into the whole process.
Okay, so consider this our express guide for you, the learner. We want to
Yeah.
pull out the core stuff you need to know about managing these adjustments in construction.
Right. So you get a clear picture of what they mean for the cost, the schedule, and, the legal side of things.
Exactly. Let's get into it. So the chapter kicks off pretty bluntly. Contract documents, never perfect.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It seems obvious, maybe, but it really sets the stage. Changes are just normal,
Yeah.
part of the deal on basically every project.
And, it's not just that they happen, it's how you handle them. That's strategically vital.
How so?
Well, if you don't have a good process, it can cause a lot of anxiety, right? Cost time, cost money, can lead to big disputes, even lawsuits.
Oof, yeah. Don't want that.
So the chapter stresses you need clear procedures before you even start. Proactive planning.
Makes sense, like having a plan B or C or D baked in from the start.
Precisely. And the main tool for doing that formally is the change order, the CO, or it's sometimes called a modification.
CO, okay. Think of it like the project's edit button.
Sort of, yeah. It lets you make adjustments but keeps everything legally buttoned up, protects everyone involved.
So strip it down for us. What is a change order, fundamentally?
At its core, it's a written agreement. Simple as that.
Between
The owner, the contractor, and usually the architect is involved too.
Yeah.
And its job is to formally change the original contract terms.
Got it. So it's the official legal way to say, okay, Plan A needs tweaking. Here's Plan A.1.
Exactly. And the chapter draws a line between COs and addenda. That's important.
Oh, yeah. What's the difference?
The addenda are changes made during bidding. So before you even have a contractor locked in, before the contract's signed.
Ah, okay. Pre-game adjustments.
Right. Change orders happen after the contract's awarded,
Yeah.
after work might have even started. They're in-game calls.
That's a really helpful distinction. Okay, so who actually starts the ball rolling on a change order and who has the final say?
Well, interestingly, the architect often does the paperwork, but really, anyone on the team might spot the need for a change. A sub, the GC, the owner.
But who signs off?
That's the key part. Typically needs signatures from the owner, the architect, and the contractor. All three agree.
Makes sense. And why issue one? What are the main triggers?
The chapter boils it down to three main things. A change in the actual work, the scope.
Like adding something.
Yeah, or changing a material. Second, a change in the project cost. And third, a change in the completion date, the timeline.
Then I mentioned additive versus deductive changes.
Right. Additive adds work, usually means more cost, maybe more time.
Okay.
Deductive takes work away, so could mean less cost, maybe a shorter schedule. Pretty straightforward.
Gotcha. Now, what about tiny tweaks? Things that come up on site? A chapter mentioned minor changes.
Yes, minor changes. The key there is they don't impact the cost or the schedule. Zero impact.
Like changing a paint color quickly.
Exactly. That's a classic example. If it's done early enough not to cause delays or extra cost. But even though they don't need a full formal CO.
You still write it down.
Absolutely. The chapter recommends documenting everything in writing, just to avoid any he said, she said later on.
Always good advice. Okay, so we know how changes get formalized. Let's dig into why they happen. It's not always just mistakes or the owner being indecisive, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, those happen, sure. But there's a wider range of reasons. A big one is just errors or omissions in the original documents.
Like what?
Maybe the architectural drawings don't quite line up with the structural plans, or the electrical details conflict with the plumbing. Lack of coordination.
I can see how that would cause problems on site. Definitely needs clarification, maybe a change.
For sure. Then you've got changes the owner wants.
Right, it is their project.
Exactly. They might decide halfway through they do want that skylight after all, or they want to upgrade the carpet. They generally have the right to make reasonable changes.
Okay, what else?
Market forces can play a role. Maybe that specific Italian marble they wanted suddenly becomes unavailable or way too expensive.
So you need a substitute. That could change the cost.
Yep. And then there are delays. Big one.
Ooh, delays, the bane of any project.
Totally. They can come from anywhere: slow approvals, site issues, bad weather. The key is if they impact the critical path.
The what now?
The critical path, it's the sequence of tasks that determines the absolute earliest the project can finish. If something on that path gets delayed, the whole project gets delayed.
Oh, okay. So delays there are a big deal.
Huge. And the chapter stresses how vital it is for the contractor to document why any delay happened. Really important for potential claims later.
Makes sense. What about just doing things in a different order?
Changes in sequence, yeah. The contractor usually figures out the most efficient schedule, but maybe the owner asks, hey, can you finish the garage first?
Okay.
If the contractor agrees, that shift might mess with their plan, maybe add time or cost indirectly, so it could warrant a change order discussion.
Interesting. The chapter also talked about cost cutting and value engineering.
Right. Owners often look for savings. Maybe the contractor suggests a less expensive but equally functional material. That's cost cutting.
And value engineering.
It's a bit more systematic. Analyzing the function of something to get the required performance at the lowest life cycle cost. Not just cheaper up front, but smarter overall.
When do those suggestions usually happen?
Depends on the contract type, really. If the contractor's involved early, during design, there's more opportunity.
Got it. And sometimes changes come from outside, right? Like inspectors.
Spot on.
Mhm.
Building departments, fire marshals. They might require something different based on codes, maybe a higher grade of conduit or an extra smoke detector.
And if it wasn't the contractor's oversight.
And that likely becomes a change order, yeah.
Yeah.
Adds cost or work.
And lastly, the chapter mentioned surprises underground.
The unknowns beneath our feet. Huge potential for changes. You start digging and find an old foundation, archaeological stuff, contaminated soil, a high water table, utilities no one knew about.
Wow, yeah. That could stop work completely.
Absolutely. Big impacts on cost and schedule.
Yeah.
I remember one job we hit an old, undocumented cistern. Big delay, big CO.
Man, it really shows how change is almost built into the process. Okay, so let's walk through the process. How do these changes actually get made official? The chapter breaks it down, right? Field initiated versus owner or architect initiated.
Exactly. That's a useful way to look at it. Let's start with field initiated. Something comes up on site. The example used was pipes in a lobby that weren't shown as being enclosed.
Okay, so a subcontractor notices this. Then what?
They'd usually write up a quick field question, send it to the GC, the general contractor.
Not directly to the architect.
Generally, no. It goes up the chain.
Yeah.
The GC might know the answer, or they might need clarification. If they need it, they send a formal request for information, an RFI, to the architect.
Got it. Keep the GC in the loop. So the architect gets the RFI. What's their next move?
They review it. Maybe the answer is simple, points to another drawing. Or they might realize, oops, yeah, that wasn't detailed correctly. We need a change. In that case, the architect issues a request for a change proposal back to the GC, basically asking, okay, what's the cost and time impact to fix this? Will often include sketches or details.
Okay, so the ball's back in the GC's court. They get this request.
Right. The GC, probably talking with the subs involved, figures out the impact. Labor, materials, equipment, schedule delays, all of it.
Then they package that up.
Yep. They create a change proposal, sometimes called a change order proposal, and send that back to the architect and owner. Figure 24.1 in the chapter shows an example. It'll clearly describe the work.
And then the architect and owner look at the proposal. What can they do?
They review it. They can accept it as is. They can reject it. Maybe the cost is too high, or they rethink the change. Or they might ask for adjustments. Send it back for revision.
Okay, let's say they approve it. What's the final step to make it official?
Once it's approved, the architect turns that proposal into the formal change order document. These get tracked, numbered sequentially, figure 24.2 is an example, CO.
And then signatures.
Crucial step. Owner, architect, contractor, all three sign. That makes it a legal amendment to the contract. Then the contractor can officially proceed with the changed work.
Okay, clear process for field issues. What about when the owner or architect initiates the change directly? Like wanting better countertops.
Right. If it doesn't start with a field question, the architect typically just kicks it off by sending a wrapper request for a change order proposal straight to the contractor. Hey, price out upgrading these countertops for us.
And the contractor responds with a proposal just like before.
Exactly. They calculate the cost and time, submit the proposal.
And the owner-architect review options are the same. Approve, adjust, reject.
Yep. Approve leads to a CO. Adjust means more negotiation. Reject means the idea is dropped.
The chapter also mentioned an example about changing a foundation detail with sketches SK3 and SK4. Sounds like visuals are pretty important here.
Oh, absolutely. Clear drawings, sketches, vital for everyone to understand exactly what's changing. Avoids confusion, helps get accurate pricing.
Let's zoom in on that change order proposal again, figure 24.1. What absolutely has to be in there?
Okay, basics. Date, a proposal number for tracking, a clear description of the change, reference back to what started at the RFI, the architect's request, and any supporting documents, like those sketches.
And the cost breakdown, how's that usually shown?
Typically itemized. Direct labor costs, materials, equipment, then percentages added on top.
Percentages for what?
Things like supervision, labor burden, that's payroll taxes, insurance benefits, stuff beyond the hourly wage.
Yeah.
And then overhead and profit, O&P.
Right, the contractor's business costs and margin.
Exactly. And if subs are doing the work, the GC usually adds a markup to their cost too. Ideally, the chapter notes these percentages, the O&P, the markup, are agreed upon in the original contract.
Oh, smart. Avoids arguing about percentages every single time.
Definitely streamlines things, saves a lot of back and forth.
Okay, now the final formal change order document, figure 24.2, maybe an AIA G701 form. What are the absolute must-haves there?
Needs its own unique CO number. Clear description of the change again. Critically, the agreed change to the contract price is it adding cost or deducting?
Additive or deductive, right?
Yep. And any change to the project completion date, or it might explicitly say the date doesn't change. And then the signatures. Owner, contractor,
And architect.
on forms like the AIA G701. Yes, the architect signs too. The chapter mentions consensus docs forms sometimes don't require the architect's signature on the final CO itself, which is an interesting difference.
So with all this back and forth, RFIs, proposals, COs, sketches, it sounds like keeping track is a massive job.
Oh, it's critical. Huge amount of paperwork. The chapter really emphasizes the need for careful monitoring. Tracking logs, just like for submittals kept by the GC, the architect, the subs, everyone needs to be organized.
Beyond the obvious cost, materials, labor, and the direct time impact, are there other, maybe hidden effects to consider? The chapter called it impact analysis.
Yeah, that's super important. You've got the direct costs, sure. But what about indirect costs, extended overhead, and less obvious things?
Like what?
Like how the timing of changes or just having a lot of changes can mess with overall job site productivity. Efficiency drops?
Ah, the ripple effect.
Exactly. And a change in one area might cause unexpected problems somewhere else later on. So smart contractors often put language in their proposals saying, essentially, this price covers the direct work, but we reserve the right to address unforeseen impacts later. Figure 24.1 had an example of that wording.
Covering their bases for those hidden ripples. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the chapter also laid out some industry guidelines for smooth change management. What are the big ones?
Key principles, yeah.
Yeah.
Number one, get it in writing, always. Even for minor stuff. Prevents disputes.
Document everything.
Got it. Second, changes should generally stay within the original project scope. If things change so much it's basically a different project, you might need a whole new contract.
That's okay.
Also, know who can sign off on changes in each organization. Define the process clearly, how costs are calculated, how credits for deleted work are handled.
And agree on those O&P percentages up front, right?
Yes. Highly recommended. Makes things way faster. Ensure the change itself is clearly defined. Good drawings help. And the contractor needs to review impacts before starting the work.
And everyone needs to move quickly.
Definitely. Timely proposals, timely reviews, timely decisions keeps the project flowing. Delays in the change process cause, well, more delays.
Makes total sense. But what if people just don't agree? Or there's an emergency, no time for the full process? Chapter mentioned change directives.
Right. So the owner generally can order a change even if the contractor objects to the cost initially. If agreement is missing or time is critical like an emergency repair needed, now they can use a construction change directive.
How's that different from a CO?
It's signed initially just by the owner and architect. It directs the contractor to proceed. It becomes part of the contract later once the contractor signs and the cost time are eventually agreed upon. Figure 24.3 shows one.
So it forces the work to happen when needed, even without full agreement yet.
Essentially, yes. And then minor changes, just to reiterate. Strictly no cost or time impact. Need written notice from the architect, but no formal CO needed.
Okay, let's quickly recap the main types then. Formal change order, written authorization, architect and owner involved, impacts, cost, time, or scope. Signed by all three. That's the big one.
Correct. That's the primary legal mechanism after the contract is awarded.
Minor changes. No cost or time impact. Written notice needed, but no formal CO with all the signatures.
Spot on. That captures the key distinctions.
All right. Well, wrapping this up, it seems crystal clear that changes aren't just possible in construction, they're pretty much guaranteed, right?
Almost always, yeah. It's the nature of the beast.
So understand this whole change order process isn't just helpful, it's, well, essential for managing projects well and, frankly, avoiding a lot of headaches and disputes.
Absolutely. And I think the big takeaway here, especially for you, the learner, is just how much emphasis there is on clear communication, solid documentation, and having agreed upon procedures from the get-go.
Yeah, that really came through.
It just highlights that proactive planning and real collaboration are fundamental in construction. It's too complex otherwise.
So here's a final thought to chew on. Think about those core ideas: clear communication, documenting agreements, understanding the ripple effects of changes. How could those principles apply outside construction? In other complex projects, maybe even important agreements in your own life? What change order systems might you need, metaphorically speaking, to keep things clear and avoid problems down the road?